The prisoner's eyes flew open, and he bolted upright, gasping for air. He had no idea how long he had been unconscious, but his head was throbbing, and he felt disoriented. He looked around his small, dingy cell and noticed something odd. The prison was empty, and he was alone. At first, he felt a sense of elation. He had been in prison for years, and the idea of escaping had always been a distant dream. Now it seemed as though that dream had come true. But then he noticed that the door to his cell was still locked. He tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. He banged on the door, shouting for help, but no one answered. Panic set in as he realized that he was trapped. He had no food, no water, and no way to escape. He was going to die in this cell. At first, he thought it must be some sort of mistake. Maybe the guards had forgotten about him, or they were playing a cruel joke. But as the hours turned into days, he began to realize the truth. He was alone, and he was going to die. The prisoner's mind started to race with thoughts of despair. How long had he been in this cell? Days? Weeks? Months? He had no way of knowing. He started to lose track of time, and the darkness began to consume him. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, and he felt weak and dizzy. He searched his cell for any scraps of food, but there was nothing. He drank what remained of his toilet water, hoping to stave off the thirst. When he saw roaches and bugs crawling across the floor, he didn't hesitate to catch them and eat them. He felt like an animal, living off scraps and filth. As the days turned into weeks, the prisoner's despair deepened. He lay on the floor of his cell, feeling the cold concrete against his skin. He thought about his life before he was locked up, the mistakes he had made, and the people he had hurt. He wondered if anyone would miss him when he was gone. Sometimes, he would hear noises in the prison, echoes of distant footsteps or voices. He would shout for help, but there was never any response. He began to think that he was going insane, that his mind was playing tricks on him. But then, something happened. One day, as he was lying on the floor, he heard a sound that was different from anything he had heard before. It was a faint scratching sound, like something scraping against metal. He crawled to the door and pressed his ear against it, straining to hear. The sound grew louder, and he realized that someone was trying to pick the lock. He shouted for help, his voice hoarse and weak, but he didn't care. He was filled with a newfound hope, a glimmer of light in the darkness. The lock clicked, and the door swung open. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the light. The prisoner didn't recognize the person, but he didn't care. He was free. The figure approached him and helped him to his feet. "Come on," he said. "We have to get out of here." As they made their way through the empty prison, the prisoner felt a mix of emotions. He was grateful to be alive, but he was also angry. Angry at the system that had locked him up, angry at the guards who had abandoned him, and angry at himself for the mistakes he had made. As he stepped out into the sunlight, the prisoner realized that he couldn't escape his past. He was a prisoner, and he had been locked up for a reason. He couldn't undo what he had done, and he couldn't live a better life if he was still serving his time. He looked up at the sky, feeling a sense of hopelessness wash over him. He knew that his future was bleak, that he would spend the rest of his days behind bars. But even in his despair, he felt a glimmer of something else. Acceptance. He had made mistakes, terrible mistakes, and now he was paying the price. But maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to make amends. He could help others, he could try to make a difference in any small way that he could. The prisoner knew that his life would never be the same, but he was determined to make the most of it. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to face whatever the future held for him.